Thank you. And thank you for the introduction, Jodie, and welcome everybody so early in the morning. Thank you. It's fantastic to see such a great turnout. Just very briefly, my experience of working in AFP and organising war coverages. The most important thing is safety. You send people to wars, you want to come back. And the change of culture in Hong Kong is that Hong Kong has now become a hostile environment for journalists. And we're going to really have to develop a culture of training journalists to cover hostile environments, which as we saw particularly last Sunday. So we couldn't have a better speaker than Stevo. I'd like to thank him for his time. And so this is going to be a practical discussion. It's a big workshop, a lot of people, 100 people. So Stevo's going to go into the practicalities of it. Another day we're going to have a panel to discuss press freedom and these kinds of issues. But today we're going to really focus on how to go in, cover protests and come back out again without getting yourself or anybody else injured. So I'll just hand the floor to Stevo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, everybody hear me okay? Right. So this is a presentation put together today from a 4-hour training deck that we have for our journalists. So it's going to be very text heavy, there's no video footage in there, but we're going to go through piece by piece. A lot of this stuff you already know for sure. I think the way I'm going to put it across to you is to make it come together as like a plan as opposed to just bits of information that you picked up along the way. I have some equipment to show you, which I think is one of the things that you should definitely take away from this. But the other thing is, I really want you to focus on is behaviors. What's going to keep you safe. I know there's a balance to be played there, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so it's just as I mentioned, we're going to go through a series of chapters here, the context and situation. This is a training deck originally for us to consider going to protests around the world that turn into riots and civil disorder. But we pretty much know the context and situation of Hong Kong already. Saying that, though, when we get to the slide, you'll see that given every demonstration that we had out here has almost been a cliffhanger for the next one, I think it's worth looking at the next planned demonstration with a fresh set of eyes and go into planning mode rather than just, I'll turn up at the bridge at this time. Okay. Use of weapons, quite a myriad so far. Luckily, it's all been less than lethal force, but we'll look into that. And then preparation and planning, specialist equipment, which I have some for you here today. I managed to keep it focused on the equipment that you need right now. Should we get to the situation where we need ballistic equipment, then I'm happy to come back and talk about that another time. Otherwise we'll run over. And then, actually the last little bit, the reporting bit, the bit that you guys do. Okay then, so when we look at any demonstration or protest, we really look at a trend analysis of that area and the people involved, the political movement, the appetite for violence, or where we think it's going. And as I say, this is part and parcel now in Hong Kong. You don't really have to think about this too much. We can look at the past incidents. We can look at when tear gas was used. I mean, one of the comments I got on Sunday morning was, I don't think there'll be tear gas this time, will there? Like, wow, that's because it wasn't on the last one, but we know it's been used, so it's not like they're going to break some new line in offensive action by using tear gas. So yeah, we'd plan for tear gas at every time. Also, where the protests are going to take place, this is great on Hong Kong Island. You've got this linear setup where you go down Queen's Road, East Johnson Road, there's Lockhart Road, so you have all these parallel lines. And that makes life extremely easy for planning, especially if you're video work. I work with our video person a lot, and we only have this one person, so we have to run around like we're a whole crew. So we start at the beginning and then run down a side street, and we can work that out in our planning situation. Then there's long-standing periods of civil unrest, and as a news organisation, how many people here are actually independent, purely independent, with no teams supporting them, freelancing? Good for you, good for you. Anybody else? Oh, okay, good. Okay, so when you're working with the bigger organisations, it's, when we get into the long run here, we're now on like the 5th or 6th rotation of journalists. So it's not just our specialist in the field who's here today, thankfully, but we now, I think we've put about 10 journalists through the mill on this one so far. So it's a long running issue. Okay. And yeah, every scenario, whether it's peaceful protest, riot, carries additional facts which will inform how you approach your reporting effort. So the next one, I believe we're going up north somewhere, and it's going to be contrary to where the violence took place at the MTR, so it's almost a bit of a challenge coming up. So that's going to have its own planning requirements. Does that make sense? This is not just a normal run-of-the-mill, we're going down Lockhart Road. Okay. So yeah, previous incidents can be instructive. As I mentioned, you know, that we have seen the use of baton rounds, paintball guns. Where's my fellow friend from Bloomberg? We witnessed paintball the other night being fired into the crowd. Tear gas, obviously. Tear gas grenades, which was a new one I saw on Sunday. So we can see, you know, what the level of weaponry is going to be used. Also the state of the agitation inside the crowd too. You know, are we seeing a bunch of kids that are just going to be peacefully demonstrating? And we can see that change. You know, we've seen more equipment coming on, although it's ad hoc, and some of it looks like they're from their favorite anime cartoon or whatever it is, but you see people turning up dressed for the fight. Attitude towards a specific group or particular groups, that's important, that's coming up, right? So we now have this first element coming in where we have this white shirted group beating up on black shirted groups and some of that. So we have a factionalization here in the fighting or in the protest. And the physical dimension, as I said, is critical. And you can see how the police can control an environment and how they can't. So when we're running down the grid lines of the cities in this side of the island, the police has got an ability to cut off roads, but when we saw in Mongkok, where there was a large, more open space, there's a lot more difficult for them to control. And remember that their control is actually part of your safety. Okay, so what we should expect then, order and confusion. Yeah, well, we have that, don't we? We seem to have a whole daylight session of perfectly great order. Thank you. Of perfectly great order, you know, 1 million people walking down the road at 1 mile an hour, you know, kids out there, everything's fine. But then come the witching hour at a certain time of the evening, the families leave, and then we move into our confusion and chaos. So it is a fluid environment. We actually see it move from sort of one stage of a protest to a more agitated protest. There are bad actors out there. I think on the first big march, I overheard someone talking about his adventures in Korea. He'd flown in just to cause trouble, and I managed to see him later that night screaming to get the crowd riled up, and then he launched into beating somebody up to inspire violence. So there are some guys out there, almost like adventure tourists. I haven't seen them lately though. And then there's violence. And that happens really quickly. And we can say that, you know, any attempt by the police to show force will inspire violence, but we also know that a lack of police presence also causes some sort of violence or upheaval too. So it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's going to be there, depending on the mood of the crowd. So there are signals for violence. I mean, we can see where it's going to come from. And as a security guy, and I'm working with my reporters who are deeply focused in getting color in an interview or down the camera lens of a video camera, and they're not seeing what I'm seeing. But you can pick up these little signs. Once you get to know them, you're able to pull someone away and say, hey, it's time to move right now, you know, and nobody knows why you're saying it, but you're getting this sixth sense. And it's not really a sixth sense, you can see these little signs pop up. So small isolated pockets of violence, as I say, you know, a whole bunch of guys getting agitated and pushing and shoving, that spreads pretty quickly. That's like a ripple effect across the crowd. So yeah, you see that going on in a corner half a mile away, it's already time to move away. That's gonna ripple towards you in no time at all. Repositioning of police or law enforcement. I don't know if you've seen this at the crossroads where the police get an order, they all form up, the crowd starts to get edgy, the police literally turn around the corner to block off a new road. They've moved all of 30 meters, but the crowds move back 100 meters and then come back again, like it's ebb and flow, and there's a chance for a little stampede issue going on there. The arrival of new groups, well, this has just arrived, and this is going to happen soon. Individuals wrapping faces, which seems to be not an escalation here.
New groups, you said new groups.
Okay, so right now we have this black-shirted demonstration. You have different factions of police out there, you know, whether they're green or black, and you can know which ones are doing what job. But now this white-shirted element, so we're going to have counter-protesters, which could bring new violence to it. You know, whether they're state-sponsored or they're just a separate gang that believes in something else is a matter for conjecture. Individuals wrapping faces. This is like a staple. This starts early on in the day here. Normally this would be a sign of any protest where, you know, a very peaceful protest, and then you see someone putting a mask on, like, okay, it's going to get nasty here. But actually this is how it starts. I think it's actually part of the costume drama in a lot of ways.
So when people start to put masks on, that's a
You'd normally think that would be the time to be worried, but that seems to be the starting point here.
Okay.
That's not the escalation of violence, that's the beginning of their protest, is to start putting their mask on. So it's not automatically worrying to me when I see someone putting their bandana around their face. And of course, you know, this is a new dimension. I say new, security is a nascent industry for journalism, but in the last few years, you know, a few years ago, we wouldn't have considered facial recognition cameras being pointed at the crowd. So it might not be because they're preparing for tear gas. It's more likely that they just don't want to be put on camera. So that's why they're wrapping their faces. Dismantling barricades and barriers, that happens very quick here with some amazing efficiency. And you don't see where the central command is on all this, and there isn't. It's just a bunch of guys that, okay, let's pull this barrier down and make this barrier right here, and then they'll shuffle that down the road somewhere. That's almost like I could find a better word, but I'm going to say foreplay for violence. That's where they're putting their lines in, right? Groups reach the end of the path. So when we have these planned protests, the police actually say it starts in Victoria Park and it ends here, Ledgeco or wherever it is. And it's that point at the end there where, you know, that's where we're going to go and set up our cameras or whatever it is. That's where we think the violence is going to happen. And as I said, any attempts to move fences and barriers and walls. So all these different signals, you know, they move towards something else. But as a security person, this is what I'm picking up as sort of my feedback. So a myriad of weapons out there from both sides, and we haven't seen the worst of them yet from either side. What we're seeing is objects being hurled from the protesters, whether it be paving stones or pieces of piping. And from the other side, from the police, we're seeing less lethal force, still painful stuff, right? The beanbag rounds, tear gas, the paintball, which we saw on Sunday. What else we got out there? Rubber bullets. I think also, anybody who was there on Sunday, I saw tear gas grenades for the first time, which were very incendiary. They're not just the canister that pops off from the gun, they actually exploded in the air, and quite dazzling. I saw one guy nearly get caught fire on this one, which will bring us into a piece of equipment that you guys need to have.
But also, I mean, when you see I saw a policeman firing tear gas, but it was horizontal. Well, that's going to hit.
Yeah, horizontal is normally for the baton round, for the rubber bullet.
Right.
The tear gas is not that effective, horizontal. They'll do that at like a 45-degree arc to get some distance. Right. The tear gas grenades, I think the idea behind them is that you don't have a canister hitting someone on the head by accident, but you know the side effect of this is
But they don't always fire the tear gas in the air.
No, they don't. And people do get carried away. Yeah, so knowing how the weapon state increases is also another sign for you, or for me as a security guy, to look after my journalists. I can actually say how much further away we're going to go now because a new weapon system has just been brought out. So look at those then. So everybody's comfortable with this, or heavily uncomfortable with this? Tear gas and pepper spray, being used quite a lot here. They're wide area effects, especially the tear gas. The pepper spray is really quite sort of deliberate in your face type stuff, and we've seen some appalling usage of that here. The canisters, as we just mentioned, they're blunt objects in themselves, so even after they've been fired, they're still going to hit someone. But these are incapacitating weapons, so they'll make you choke, splutter, drip snot everywhere, and make it impossible for you to do your job. So the way we mitigate against this is, and I'll show you the equipment. You can use gas masks, there's facial filters, eye protection of different types. Even, swimming goggles would do it for this. And we can also treat this stuff. Anybody here, seen people use milk for pepper spray? Okay, there's a long-held belief that the fat in milk picks up the capsaicin in the pepper spray and takes it away, but it's not a bad idea. Unfortunately, milk is not, what's the word I'm looking for, sanitized, clean.
Right.
So it can cause you a secondary infection if you try and unload your eyes with milk after a pepper spray attack.
So should you use it or not?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
So if you get pepper sprayed, you use milk?
I use milk, yeah. But, I'm not going to take the lawsuit for you guys getting an eye infection. Okay. Stun grenades, flashbangs, rubber bullets. This is where we're getting into the real projectile stuff and the nasty stuff. Molotov cocktails, petrol bombs, we haven't seen them yet. We don't want to see them. Water cannons. Now, they've got the fire department here. Have we seen the use of a water cannon to disperse a crowd here yet? Has that happened? No, I haven't seen that yet. In other countries, they don't just use a water cannon, they'll use a dye pack in the water cannon. I don't know where that stands legally in Hong Kong. I know it's illegal in Britain now. Basically, they'll put this indelible ink in the water and they'll go arrest everybody the next morning because they're all purple. We haven't got there yet. And armored vehicles are incredible, right? So you have this multi-million-dollar piece of equipment that weighs several tons, has got a battlefield range or whatever it is, but it's defeated by a very simple weapon, which is just public opinion. No one's going to run armored vehicles into the people in Hong Kong, I would hope. So despite how much that technology costs, it really is defeated by a camera just focusing on someone standing in front of the vehicle, right? Paintball guns we just saw. I'm not sure what they're firing, if there's any sort of special paintball ballistic that they're firing at people, but it's definitely being used. So these are point effects. They're not necessarily a large-scale effect, a whole crowd effect, which we saw with tear gas. They're definitely used before a charge. So in police terms, you'd have the barrier, and then the teams would open up, and a snatch squad should go out and then grab someone and pull them back in, and they'll use these weapons to disable people around them, so there's not a big fight there, and they just grab that one person, bring him back, arrest them, and put them in the paddy wagons, which are the vehicles that follow the police behind. They do cause blunt force trauma, and we'll go into the mitigations for that later with the equipment, I think. And I'm not going to cover this one too much, okay? This is the lethal force weapons that we haven't seen here. We have seen it in the past 2 weeks in Khartoum. We saw it pretty close in Puerto Rico recently. So this is where the police are letting loose with firearms. So my wife got shot twice in Mauritius with a firearm. When she told me, I asked if they knew who she was. That's why they did it. But yeah, her lesson from that was, when the guns come out, stand on the side of the people that have the guns, which is, that's very clear. She's a photojournalist.
She survived it.
She survived it, yeah. I think actually her words when she got shot the second time, like, "You've got to be kidding." It was an inch away from the first one, Okay. Yeah, so we see this a lot in even peaceful protests in the Middle East, where, that amount of people attracts violence from terrorism, and we have bombing and everything else. And we're not seeing that here. I'm just going to skip over it, to be honest with you, but hopefully it will never come. So planning and preparation, just looking at our time, how are we doing?
We're fine.
Okay. So if you're an individual out here, and that's why I asked who you were, and you're not working for an organization, you're freelancing, please tell me that you have someone you're reporting into, whether it's your mother, I don't care, but someone needs to know that you're okay at a certain time. Yeah. If not, please, you can call me, I'll give you my number. If you're working as groups or as teams, then you'll have your meetings before the demonstrations, hopefully, and you'll talk about reporting times and where you're going to gather up, what your minimum safe exposure is, how close you can be, and that constant communications. If you've got a WhatsApp group going like we have, you're able to point each other in the right directions, avoid this street, whatever it is. So this is all part of your planning and preparations, how you're going to communicate, what your minimum standards are, and what time you're going to deploy to where, everything else. All the factors to take in place, weather. Yeah, it's always going to be hot.
Just Stevo, you talked about a WhatsApp group. What about if the network's down? What's your contingency for that?
Well, then we go on to, actually data networks aren't too bad. It's really difficult to get voice comms over at some places. I know around Wan Chai there's a big electrical interference there anyway. So electrical interference plus too many people on the net, you couldn't get a call to go through, but actually the messaging does work. And if you take away data and go to old analog text messages, that works too. I'm being in Japan recently, and one of the local guys asked me what a text was. He didn't have the app. I felt very old. Weather, yeah, it's always going to be hot and horrible here. The street layout, so it's not something you have to plan ahead for. You know where it's going to be. A lot of us are local here. I'm 18 months in. I'm pretty sure I know my way around Hong Kong now already. Security, so this is where we have to take a look out with social media, police announcements, where security is going to be in place. And you can see it going up the day before, barriers around the police headquarters in Arsenal Street, where the police say the demonstration is going to end, and then there's a social media, what the protesters are saying, what they're going to achieve. So all this is a serious part of your planning. And then safety medical areas, what are you going to do if someone gets injured? This is pretty important. I go with my journalists on the field most of the time, but when I'm not there, we know which hospital to go to first, and how to get out of there safely. Infrastructure, which areas are going to be heavily protected against protests, and we know what they are here, right? We've seen them every time. Nobody wants those barracks to be overrun. Okay, looking at the groups and their history, we're coming up to a new scenario this week, which I won't be here for, where we might see an extra added group put into the protest issues. Pairing, I won't let my video people go without another person, so no video person will work on their own. I think of all the journalists, they're the ones that have the narrowest point of view. They don't know that they're going to get run over. Our video person is about 4'10", and I truly worry for her safety, so I always walk around with her, in case she just gets steamrolled over by the crowd.
So if you get a video journalist, you need a second pair of eyes, basically.
Yeah, totally. You need someone to watch their six, as it's called in the military, right? Medical conditions and mobility, can you get out of there, and what equipment we carry? I can show you some of the equipment that we're carrying, and after Sunday's protests and seeing the incendiary weapons out there, we're going to increase the amount of equipment our journalists will carry, which makes them so happy they have to carry more equipment. Use of a driver, if that's necessary. We took so long to get to the pub after that last protest, trying to find a taxi to get through roadblocks. I would definitely have a driver out there next time. And then, visibility. We're putting out press credentials. This is a protest area where you have to do this. It does make sense. Don't hide yourself. In other countries, you don't want to be seen as a journalist. You'd rather be seen as a neutral. But here, it's certainly something you should be doing. It makes all the difference. Okay, coordination, brush through that. Check-ins, this is a communication schedule. If you don't have an active WhatsApp group, you have to report in every hour or so. And this is really important for me if I'm talking to journalists who are overseas doing this. So during the protests in Jakarta, or we had some in Uganda recently with some guys out there during protests, and they had to report in. I wasn't going to follow them live. Phone battery, this is really important nowadays. Your phone is just taken off right now. It's your media device. It's where all your communications coming in. You're sending out GPS mapping. You're videoing everything. The batteries aren't designed for protests, I'm afraid. So you have to have a power bank with you. At least 7 charges. If I'm looking at a certain person in the audience, I want my power bank back. From how can I put it, a very local point of view, we have people up in the crowd who come up to you and say, do you need power for your phone? You're a journalist. And they're offering to plug you into their power bank. We won't do that, ever, okay? The ability to suck information from your phone or put something in from a device that looks like a power bank is frightening. So we're never going to play that game, okay? It sounds like a nice Samaritan-like thing to do, but don't do that. Contact numbers. It's good to have contact numbers written on you, whether it's in a piece of paper that's going to go soggy in your pocket, or in a a permanent marker on your arm, because if your phone battery goes down, that's it, your entire network is gone too. Okay, know when the start and the end of the event is. We talked about check-ins, meetup times, light and dark hours. That's generally when the, I can give you a PDF of this afterwards if you like as well. Generally when the witching hour comes is when things go dark, the kids disappear, and then the face masks come up and we're getting ready for a bit of violence.
Why has the violence always been at night, do you think? Is it different people, or what
I think it really is a transition between peaceful protest to now this is where we're going to do our thing, or have our violence, or make it a stand. I would love to think that there is a coordination between the time of getting children away from the scene. Every now and again, 8 o'clock at night, there's somebody walking past with their 4-year-old child. You think, this is not the place for you. And I would like to think that it's coordinated with that. I'm not sure that it is.
Okay.
Maybe one forces the other. Clothing, let's talk about that. This is not how I go to work in the morning. Okay, I'm actually dressed for you guys today. So this is all part of my riot control stuff, and it's all natural clothing. You have to wear natural fibers. Okay, so what are they? Wool? Well, that's not going to work here, is it? But yeah, cottons, linen. I had someone turn up on Sunday in silk, very classy. But equally as good. This is stuff that doesn't catch fire, doesn't melt to you, and it will. I'm very worried about watching all this cling film wrapped around arms and legs to protect you against pepper spray. The devices that were being thrown out on Sunday, that will melt to you in no uncertain terms. You cannot have anything synthetic next to your skin, so it's layers of cotton, layers of linen is what you need, and you need layers because you have to rip one off to to survive when it catches fire, right?
So no synthetics?
No synthetics, not even stretched jeans. What was the comment I had? I only have stretched jeans. I like to get some new jeans. Okay. Yeah, it has to be tough footwear as well. So you have to be able to run in it.
No flip-flops?
No high heels. Eric. Okay.
Noted.
Yeah, you have to be able to run. It has to be durable. I go for like a pair of Merrells myself, but you can wear sneakers, that's fine. And carry a towel with you. A towel is just this incredible instrument which turns into like your wet nurse blanket when you've been tear gassed. It's relieves you of shade from the sun, relieves you directly from the sun. You can cool yourself down by soaking it wet. You can use it as a sling for your arm. A makeshift bandage. A towel is a great thing to have. Vehicles and specialized equipment I'm not going to go onto. Vehicles, as I said, if you're traveling to an area where you have no public transportation or any other way out that protest, then having a vehicle stationed off with a driver in it is a great idea. Specialized equipment I'm going to take you through. I want to skip through this because Jerry says that we're going to look at the legal aspects of this and have people come and talk to you about what your rights are as journalists during this process. So, I mean, what I've got here is all conjecture based off all the different countries that we've had to go and cover protests in.
Have you had a situation where you've been asked by the police to hand over unpublished recordings, interviews?
Yes, we have.
What do you do in a situation like that?
We don't.
Yeah, but legally, what's just, excuse me, in Hong Kong, what's the legal situation?
We haven't come across it in Hong Kong. We definitely come across it in mainland China, and not necessarily in protest, but we have our own system for doing that, our own standard operating procedure. And the answer is no, we're not doing it. And in the background, we're scrambling legal, political will, everything else to alleviate that situation. We have lines that can be crossed, and I don't want to give them out. So there is points where you have to relieve, but something has to happen, a trigger has to happen.
And just another point, we're going to have a legal session, but just because the demonstrators run into Ledgeco on a Sunday night, as a journalist, do you have the legal right to follow them in?
I have a terrible selfie of me at Ledgeco. Shameful.
But was it legal to go in?
No, probably not, but I think it's one of those things that we would argue for. It's one of those things we'd fight for. Yeah, get a lawyer here to tell us where we stand on, the breaking and entry and following in after a scene of crime before the police get there. I'm sure there's all sorts of rules on that, but I'm sure we're going to defend that for journalism. Okay. Again, this is more into the planning and preparation. It seems like second nature to us in Hong Kong. We know our streets, we know where our medical places are, and you should have a plan on what you're going to do, what your company's going to do for you if you get arrested. Okay, specialist equipment.
What if you're a freelance and you get arrested? You don't have a company.
I know, that's what I say, yeah, give me your number. You really have to have a support background. As I say, if you didn't call your mum, someone's going to come and bail you out. Okay? I don't mean that patronisingly either. I mean, you need someone to be looking after your back when you're out there. Okay, press credentials. It's not just a high-vis vest. I don't have press credentials. I'm not a journalist, so I have to go around with my Dow Jones ID card and my business cards that say Wall Street Journal on, and that's what I'm using as my press credentials. I don't wear it around my neck because of a fear of being sort of garroted with it or choked with it. I'm wearing it today for you, but I'll only bring them out when I'm asked to bring them out, and hopefully there'll be enough to go on. I believe there's a lot of people out there without press credentials, a lot of people that are doing freelancing photography for their first time ever, some very young people out there. They're not going to have this sort of thing. If you have it, you should take it. Medical equipment. We haven't been using this too much because it's stuff that it's not sort of life-threatening weapons that have been used against us so far, especially where my journalists stand in the protest, and we can talk about that in a minute. But we're moving that way after seeing the devices used on Sunday. I'm going to make my journalists carry a medical kit around with them. I'm also very fortunate that everybody in my team has done a hostile environment first aid training, which is the luxury of being in a big company, I suppose. But knowing what to do for yourself and how to use things like tourniquets and bandages and stuff like that is incredibly important.
And we're going to have a first aid session, so we'll communicate that. What would you put in the medical kit in Hong Kong? I mean, if you go to the Middle East or Syria, it's one thing, but what would you carry in because the shops, the shutters can come down, so you can't guarantee there's going to be a Manning's open. So what should you, just some basic stuff you should carry?
Well, I'll let medical people talk about it, but you've got 15 minutes. There's a platinum 15 minutes that you have to get to someone and save their life, or you have to save your own life. You have 15 minutes to stop yourself bleeding too much. So I carry the equipment for that, because the next part, the golden hour, is getting to a hospital, which is easily feasible in Hong Kong. So I carry the equipment just to get through that 15 minutes, which is the stuff to stop bleeding, to get the heart going again, that kind of equipment. And it's a very small bag. No Band-Aids in there, no athlete's foot powder, nothing.
And go to a public hospital?
Yeah. Any ER will do it. Yeah. Okay, the gas mask. Now we have really great gas masks. The guy who purchased for us went the extra mile, and we have I wish I had the same one when I was in the military. It's so much lighter, so much better, clearer point of view. Yeah, when we put it on, people look at us, and I realise that we might have overdone it. Everybody else is wearing some sort of builder's respirator with a pair of glasses, and then we come in looking like stormtroopers from Star Wars. It's a bit of a problem because it looks like we're escalating. Where a bit of tear gas goes off, and there's people with these proper gas masks on. Well, we look like we're ready for business. We're not. We just don't like tear gas. Okay. So there are some things in between. I've been told that a lot of people can't afford this. Get on eBay, get on Amazon. There's stuff out there for under $100 US, which are perfectly good enough to deal with tear gas.
And what about these masks people wear that you would wear in the MTR to stop sneezing over people? Do they serve any purpose?
Yeah, they do. They're going to make you choke a quarter of the amount. I mean,
right.
They really are going to stop something, especially if they're wet.
Stop something.
I mean, yeah. And believe it or not, apple cider vinegar and lemon juice.
Apple cider vinegar and lemon juice
over a rag is better than water. Okay?
Okay.
These are improvisations. For $100, you don't have to improvise anymore. Okay? Yeah, when to use. I don't like my journalists reporting in a gas mask. It made me look dramatic. We're not video people anyway, but we put it on when the cloud comes up, when we hear that pop of the tear gas grenade, and we take it off when that cloud is gone. So we got really good at this on Sunday. I think it went on and off about 20 times. So we got pretty good at taking it on and taking it off. And we don't carry it like some sort of Lara Croft on our thigh either. It goes into our backpack. Yeah. Okay, helmet. Now, all right, so there's a lot of helmets out there, the builders' helmets, and they have their purpose, all right? So they'll take a brick or something like that. There are people out there with special forces helmets, which I think is more part of the fancy dress stuff. You don't really need that either. Ballistic helmets, I don't think they're the right fit for this demonstration. Hopefully they never will be. They're heavy, they're bulky, they obscure your work, especially if you're on camera. Camera work, and you don't need that level of protection. Not yet. Hopefully never. Rock climbing helmets to me are the way to go. They're designed for rocks bouncing off your head, and that's exactly what you need them for here. So definitely use a rock climbing helmet. Body armor, skip through this one.
Helmets?
Yeah, better than nothing.
Okay.
Better than nothing, but yeah, that's for you falling onto the ground. I mean, what we're looking at is
But if you get a rock in
a
there,
pound of rock. I mean, it will do better than nothing, right? And actually it might, in some cases, do better than ballistic, because you'll get a hell of a ringing sound when you get hit with a ballistic helmet. You know, it really puts you out. But yeah, there's nothing better than a rock helmet, and rock climbing helmet is about the same price, right? Body armor, we'll skip through this one. So there's different types of body armor, stab proof, and then there's different variables of ballistic body armor. We don't have the weapons on the street at the moment that would justify us using this, and turning up in it might actually escalate the problem. Eye care, so we use a kind of ski goggle, but it's not totally airtight. So it's not good for tear gas, but it is good for pepper spray. Swimming goggles, although they're not quite as cool, the Speedo goggles, they're equally as good for that sort of thing. Okay, it's just basically try and keep your eyes free from pepper spray. That's what the eye protection is for. Higher visibility vests, this is absolutely essential. I think in the first protest, not enough journalists were wearing these, and there may have been some violence against journalists that probably wasn't initially, how can I put this delicately, maybe a mistaken identity, maybe. Okay, put your high-vis vest on, and put it on the back of your backpack as well if you need it.
Can it make you a target though?
Yeah, it's debatable. I would certainly be more worried about being confused for someone else than I would be being targeted as a journalist right now.
Okay.
That's where I stand on, you know, the feasibility of being hurt. Audio visual equipment, mostly for us it's our telephone. Now, we do have some camera equipment out there. Using this can be problematic too, especially during those lulls and standstills. If you're on top of a bridge and you think you're filming the crowd down below, not all those crowd guys want to be filmed, and they get really upset about that. You know, turn the cameras off, turn the cameras away. The police don't like the cameras in their face either too much, but it is a form of control for them, right? So they know that they're being filmed, they know they have to perform to that standard. So it's a double-edged sword, right? The camera can conform a policeman, but then can make a protester very angry. Backpacks, absolute must. To go in there with pocket contents isn't good enough. You have so many things that you have to carry, including your helmet, which you don't want to be exposed. You don't want to be walking through Mongkok on the way to a civil protest, a civilized protest, with a helmet hanging off the back of your rucksack. You look like the problem. All the police will stare at you. And I know this because. Okay, so get everything in your backpack, and then power bank. As I say, your phone is so overused now, you need at least one power bank in there, 7 charges, multiple leads, and don't use anybody else's, as we already mentioned. All right, into your part then, guys. Oh, wow. Okay. The reporting. I guess everybody has a different requirement here from different news agencies, you know, as to whether you're doing a strategic piece on why this is happening, or you're there to actually catch the combat going on and stuff like that. You've got to grade that yourselves and work out, you know, what is your acceptable a line on how close you want to be. So we had people watching the breach at Ledgeco, but I won't ever allow any of our journalists to be reporting in that gap in between protesters and police. And there are so many people out there. There are full-on camera crews from TV shows set up, and there are a lot of ad hoc, very young journalists out there right up against a police line, right up against a protest line. As I said, my wife, don't be in that space. She said, don't be in there. I agree with that. As a group, have you got a team there?
Can we go back? You were talking about positioning.
Sure.
I mean, you see a lot of people standing between the riot police and the protesters in the middle of the street. So where do you position yourself?
I position myself there too, but off to a flank. And I'll talk about that. My key word to everybody on this is get height. Get off that horizontal plane. When things go ballistic, when they go really badly sideways and someone starts using firearms, they don't stop when they hit the first person. They go straight through. They tear through about 8 or 9 people at a time. You don't want to be on that horizontal plane. Get height. Okay? It causes you another problem. If it does go into a shooting match, that you might be identified as a wrongdoer up there, and that can cause you other problems. But never be on the ground floor when it gets violent. Not for my guys. I know you have different.
Get on a footbridge or
get height.
Yeah.
Straight away, get height. Remain as a team. Make sure count everybody in, count everybody out. Here's one. Don't offer first aid assistance to anybody outside of your organisation. Sounds weird. It's hard to do, right? As a human being to not give first aid to someone, but remember what you're there for. You're there to report on what's going on, not to be part of the St. John's ambulance crew or the wonderful medics that we have hanging around just to do that sort of work. For interviews, get to the edge of the crowd. I won't let my guys go into the middle of a peaceful protest. Okay, they're 50 across now, 50 people across. I'm not letting my guys in the central reservation to do interviews. They can identify someone and ask them to come out, and we do the interview from the side there. We don't follow the direction of the crowd either, as well, especially if things start getting heated and people start moving fast. We don't move the same speed as the crowd, and we don't move in their direction. We step to a side or we move counterflow.
You don't move with the crowd?
No. That's moving in with a stampede.
Why not?
Well, it actually makes you part of the problem. Firstly, there's a chance of being trampled by the crowd. You're now going to be the target of whatever weapon system the police are using because you're with that crowd. It's much easier to stand to the side, identify your neutrality to either side, and do your job from a doorway.
So if you're doing interviews, you do it on the edges, not in the middle?
No, pull people out and do it on the edge.
Okay.
Yeah, never pick up something. That was the last point on that slide. Even if you find a canister on the floor and you think it's newsworthy, probably going to burn your fingers anyway, but don't get caught picking up anything that could look like a weapon. If you see a blooded rock, don't pick it up, because who's going to see you do that? What's that going to do to your organisation's reputation, let alone your immediate safety? If a policeman sees you doing that, you might get hit with a baton round. It's not necessary to be in the crowd to see what's happening. I'm a firm believer in that. There's probably some camera people here that really want that footage of being part of that herd that's moving at speed, but from an observer's perspective, I see very little to gain, and I won't let my people do that. But we're a different type of news organisation, I guess. Each to your own. Interactions with authorities. We're courteous to the police.
I just want to go back. So I think one of the reasons that people get caught up is because these situations move so fast as well. So how do you push it?
Well, here's the thing. You don't have to move with it.
Right, don't move with it.
No, so you step to a side, let the crowd go past. If you're above, then that's interesting. We were doing almost like a relay race of handing over from one journalist to the next on Sunday. One of our journalists would go back almost a kilometre to start writing, and before you know it, she was actually the person at the front again because the whole crowd had moved a kilometre, and then we're having to run to go around and do a bound behind her. So that's the way to do it, but not be inside the crowd. Interaction with authorities, be courteous to police, but we don't really want to spend too much time talking to the police. We certainly don't want their help or support unless we've run out of our own resources. So if we have someone severely injured, we're definitely going to be asking the police at that point. But we don't use them as an asset on the ground. They're a factor in this. In the same way, we're not going to help a protester that's been injured. We're not going to be asking the police for support.
Make them understand you're not a threat.
Yes. Okay. Arrest. We've got legal people going to talk to you about this one. One thing I will say, don't resist. Okay, I say that to my people. You know, you demonstrate your authority as a journalist, you demonstrate your independence or your neutrality, but don't resist being arrested. Don't push them away, that you're going to get hurt. And don't challenge their authority. You can't arrest me. That, oh my God, that's definitely your game.
I'm a journalist.
I would arrest you, you know. Right, this is, I think, the last slide that you need to
Can we
take.
go back to the police again? Sorry. I mean, we're okay, I think.
Sorry.
Everybody okay here? Right. There's a lot of discussion about journalists saying, the police told me to move, and I told them, I'm a journalist, I'm not moving. Right. What do you do if the police tell you to move?
Move.
You heard that? You move.
You argue. Where were we? It was a Bloomberg fellow, the big fellow. We had it the other night. Get off the bridge. Get off the bridge. We just want to get this one foot. Can we just get off the bridge? Can we just? Okay, you stay there then. Like, oh, thank God, it worked. What we didn't do is, no, I have a right. We just like begged and like, hey, come on, let's do this. I mean, we're not causing any trouble. And sure enough, the police were angry, but they just gave up on us. I think they're just sick of us, which is probably not a bad place to be. You know? They were a nuisance. You want to take a photograph of a slide, this is the one to take the photograph of. Okay, this is the basics as an individual. Okay, stay on the edge of the crowd, get height, don't put yourself between the crowd and the security forces. Know your exit plan, and someone needs to know your location and status. That's what you need to do. That's all about your location. Your demeanor. Don't run with the bulls, okay? Don't turn your back on projectiles. When the stones start throwing, don't turn around and walk away from that, okay? Keep facing it as you're walking backwards. And if you've got two of you there, make sure one of you is making sure you don't trip over backwards, especially for cameramen, okay? Work in pairs, I say 360 a view, courteous to all factions all the time, okay? Listen to what they have to say. Some of them are incredibly passionate about things that you're not quite sure are true, but just nod. Do your thing. Don't get caught in discussion. And own your situation. This is a bit where you have to show confidence. It's not, I'm a journalist, I have a right. It's like, no, it's okay. I'm just observing. You can move along, officer. You know, that's you owning your situation. And that's what we did, I think, the other night on the bridge. So I'll leave you with a summary slide. But anybody want to see some of the equipment that we're taking?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So here we are. This is the backpack. My one. I'm sorry, it's military looking, but it's actually a Nike backpack that I bought from a sports store here. It was either this or.
You might need the.
Did you get me? No. All right. Okay. I do need it. Okay. So this is not a military backpack. It's from a Nike store. So it's not like I'm a military buff. It was either this or pink. On the outside, and you don't have to do this, I didn't want to look like Lara Croft, but it just didn't fit inside somewhere I could use it. But this is our first aid kit that all my journalists are going to be carrying on now and we can have a look at this afterwards, but it really is trauma kit. There's blood clotting stuff there for a major bleed, there's a tourniquet, there's a face mask for mouth to mouth, and there are some real serious bandages here for stopping a heavy bleed. And that's what I'm talking about, it's that platinum 15 minutes of getting a very injured person to professional medical help. There's a lot of medical help out there. There's a lot of guys with EMS t-shirts on. Had a good chat with them at McDonald's the other night. So yeah, there's a lot of capable people out there to look after you. All you need to do is look after that first 15 minutes so you don't bleed out while you're waiting for help. Press credentials I carry in the top. I don't carry them around my neck normally. And as I say, it's business cards, which I have not enough of for you guys. And my own ID. I don't actually have. Anybody here have Hong Kong legal press credentials for this protest stuff?
HKGA, no?
Yes, no? Anybody? Who are the no's? I'm a no. Yeah.
Government press card. Because we met Chris Young from the HKGA, and I think they've issued about 50 or 60 press cards in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Okay, part of my identity, because I couldn't find a Wall Street Journal hat, I've got a Dow Jones one. Everybody asks me why I'm here, Dow Jones, it's brand association, I guess. The helmet of choice for us, this is what we're going for, it's a rock climbing helmet. It's super pad on the inside. What's interesting about this is that you can wear it without putting a chin strap on, not because you want to look like a GI on like Iwo Jima or something, it's because you need to have the ability to flick it off to put your gas mask on. So this will stay on your head and you can run with it without having to strap on. So it's a great piece of kit. We put our eye protection on top of it so we can just pull it down. Remember, eye protection is only going to be good for pepper spray, right? It's no good for the tear gas, okay? Eye protection doesn't stop you from choking, and it gets into your ear, nose, throat, and that's when it starts pouring out your eyes. Here we are. The gas mask, I know, right? Pretty serious stuff. So what I teach my guys to do is pull the straps back over the mask so that when they get gas, they can literally just put it on straight away before they even put the straps on. And then you have to breathe out. You can shout something like gas, gas, gas to expel the gas. Or Luke, I am your father is my favorite. Okay? So you have, Luke, I'm your father. Okay? That's a gas out. Okay? And you know when it works because you can put your hand over the vent on the filter and it will suck in. You know? And that's you knowing you have a good seal. And then you can pull the strap back over your head.
How long does it take you to get that on? Can you do as a demo?
Yeah, sure. I mean, pulling out the bag, putting it on. Done. That's it. And tear gas free. I had a great comment from one of my journalists. She said it felt like she was the child on a plane. You know when they say put it on yourself and then on your child? I put mine on and I saw her sideways on her head. Looking at me like, please help. And that's what you should do. Put it on yourself before you help others. The towel. As I said, this has got so many uses, right? A sling, it's a sunshade, it's going to relieve you of the effects of tear gas when you soak it. You can breathe through it. That's a definite must. What else have I got in here? Oh, yes, the vest. So this is vest mark number 2. We're on number 3 now, which has come with pockets as demanded by my journalists. They wanted them with pockets on the front. They're very demanding. Clearly marked with press. We've got Wall Street Journal on there as well. So gives us like some extra accreditation, I guess, that we belong to a specific news group and not a freelancer. Not that there's anything wrong with freelancers, just saying.
That looks synthetic.
It does. Right, okay, it's a good one. But this is going to melt to my clothing, not to my skin. Okay, that's a difference. You don't want your bottom layers of clothing to be plastic or elasticated. And look for these. I mean, this is the least synthetic one I could find. There are some out there which are pure plastic, and you just look at it and go, you know, that's just going to shrink wrap to you.
Okay.
We haven't got petrol bombs out here, guys, right? We don't have that. But we have seen incendiary type devices, and I swear to God, I saw someone catch fire on Sunday. It looked like it was an accidental throw by the police, to be fair, because it landed just behind their own policeman. But it hit a journalist on the trouser leg, and just this big ball of flame went up. Wow. If he'd been wearing some sort of lycra pants, they would have been part of him now. He'd still be getting them peeled off in a hospital. There are other little things you carry. You definitely have to carry water. Someone's going to laugh at this, but wet wipes. Yeah, this is years in the Middle East where they don't have toilet paper, but there's other reasons for it too. I also got told that can we have some that are perfumed, and what was the other one? That have like a reaction to make you feel cool, cooling. You know, man up, really. Power bank, okay, with a multi-lead as well. I know what I need on my phone, but you know when you've got the rest of your team there.
And don't use anybody else's power bank.
Don't use anybody else's.
So that's a well-known tactic, is it?
It is for this part of the world.
Okay.
You know, that's not true. Like if someone was to do that to you in, I don't know, South Africa, it's unlikely that they're trying to suck from your phone. But here, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
it's
advice.
Part of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what about your vinegar or your apple vinegar? You carry that?
Sorry, mine?
You said apple cider.
Apple cider? No, I don't, because I have a gas mask.
Okay, right.
Okay? That would be too much. Gas mask and apple cider.
So if you don't have a gas mask, carry a towel and apple cider, not water.
Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to the treatment, go for water or saline solution every time. I know that I said I use milk, but I'm kind of a pepper addict, so I use milk a lot anyway.
That's pepper spray.
For pepper spray, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just stick with water or saline solution, all the sanitized stuff. Oh, just a piece of paper. Oh, yeah, I'll get that later. Guys, that's really all I have time for. Well, I have time for much, much more. It takes 4 hours, but that's as quickly condensed as I can make it. There's no video footage there's no photographs, it's all text heavy, I'm sorry. I do have like a 45 page PDF document if you come and see me about that. It's intellectual property, so it would be hard copy for you, okay?
How can they contact you?
Oh, okay, so I think I'm on the first slide, but You stick around, I'll give you my business card afterwards. Here's my email address. It's stevo.steven@dowjones.com.
Take a picture.
And you freelancers with no support, please come and see me afterwards. More than happy to help out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good question. Fantastic. So it's 9:15. I think we're good. We're on slightly over, but I mean, it's very rich. I think we've got time for some questions, maybe 5 minutes. On the practicalities, please. So, anybody? Mike?
My name's Paul. I'm with the local media, Hong Kong 01. I just wondered if you could give a concrete example by saying how you would plan, for example, for this weekend's rallies
Right,
and
yeah.
protests in Yuen Long.
Well, we're pretty comfortable with our team being all medically trained and everything else. We have a communications group set up already on a WhatsApp group. We will, the day before, decide with all our social media input and what our police sources are saying about where we want to be or what time we want to be. Because of the news that we're after, and Natasha can probably, she's really been in charge of this one for us, she can probably tell you more about it, but we know when we want to be somewhere. We're not necessarily interested in following the entire march anymore, which we were in the early days. So is it fair to say we're looking for crisis points? That's about all we're going to go for, so that's what we're going to plan for. It's not dictated yet because we don't have the information we need yet. It's really going to be an intelligence-based decision. Thank you.
What about that situation on Sunday, the MTR with the white shirts? What do you do? That's a whole different ball game. What do you do in a situation?
It is,
like
right?
that?
So that's not a planned situation. If we were at the MTR at that point, yes, it's newsworthy. We would definitely want to be witnessing that. But this is an expression we have for the military. It's get off the X. The X is the point where the enemy wants you to be at. That's where you're going to get hurt. You have to get off that. It's so much more important than whatever your reporting is going to be. You have to get out of harm's way. And somebody else can report on you escaping, that's fine. But yeah, get out of harm's way. Number one priority. Microphone?
Anybody else?
I think so.
I'm Chairman Chan from Hong Kong Bilingual News. Last Sunday witnessed a sort of a crystal night for Hong Kongers. Crystal night, you know, the German
Very
Nazis.
well,
I don't think you can compare it to that.
Anyway, so if we happen to cover the news in Yuen Long, especially in the MTR station there, do we have to learn some sort of kung fu or self-defense skills when we encounter with those white shirt gangsters?
It's not a bad question, it really isn't. We have all sorts of mitigations, right? We have gas masks for gas, we have helmets for rocks, so what do you do about punches? Well, you run. That's your kung fu. Get off the X. Okay?
Can you do kung fu?
Or Tai Chi?
That's good. Very peaceful. No, get off the X. That's your kung fu. Get off the X. Don't
Just get
don't
out
be
of
part of the situation. Get out of there.
Just run.
Are you really going to fight one of these guys with an iron bar as a journalist?
You know, 15 years in the commandos, I swear to God, our unit motto, the unsung unit motto was run away, run away. Okay, that's all we did.
And journalists should not be armed, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Interesting question. Yeah, Shelley.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that journalists make?
Mike?
What do you think the biggest mistake is that journalists make in these situations?
Oh, without being too controversial, I know you guys have got different demands from your own organisations, but getting in that space between the protesters and the security forces is an enormous mistake. I know that some of you think you have to be there. I'm sure that you have demands, but none of my people are going to be in that space. That's an enormous mistake.
Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm a freelancer, but I have a question for media organizations and, just safety. Is it possible to work with the police? I mean, it's getting really violent in a sense that if journalists go report there, it would be better if there's some sort of people to protect us. But as a freelancer, of course, I couldn't do that. I'm just like asking if media organizations can really step up and talk to them.
I think that's a great question, but it's not one for security and safety. I think that's one on principles, right?
I don't know, it's just quite, I felt it's so dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know how much neutrality you want. I mean, if you think about it, you'd go and do an embed with the military somewhere in some war, wouldn't you? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what your organization's appetite is for, being seen to cover one side or another.
It's neutral in the sense that like there's no like taking sides, it's just violence. So like the opposite of that is safety and protection, right? So I was just wondering.
Well, I think that can be achieved without necessarily, as my wife said, stand on the side of the people with guns. I think it can be achieved, through smart decision making, as I said, demeanor and location. How you can comport yourself and where you do it. I think that can, especially in this level of violence. There are different levels. I'm not saying we're at the bottom here, but we're not at the top. So right now, I don't think you need the protection of body armor, helmets, or...
I mean, from your experience, how do you, in lots of different situations, how do you find the interaction with the police here?
Oof. I don't know.
It's not a political question. I just mean, like, on the ground, is there room for discussion, or is it pretty...
I can't answer for you guys. I have interactions with the police all the time here, and they're useful for me. But that's from a security perspective. I need that as part of my network. I would be useless without them.
I meant on the ground, actually.
Again, yeah, I'm cordial with them. Yeah.
Two more questions. One here.
Hi, Lainey, Time Magazine. What is your advice for when police usher journalists in between the line of journalists and protesters? And relatedly, what do you do when police are quite hostile to journalists? As I've encountered both of those.
Say that again, please.
What do you do? You're suggesting...
Can you
you're suggesting staying out of the
can you
gap.
say who you are?
Lainey, Time Magazine.
Okay.
You're suggesting staying out of the gap between police and protesters, but what do you suggest doing when police usher journalists into that gap, as has happened numerous times?
Oh, they've been doing that? I haven't seen that. I mean, I don't get in that position where I'm close enough to be ushered in. I'm not saying that I'm doing something special or different, it's just I haven't seen that. But I wouldn't do it. It's like, I wouldn't be ushered onto a balcony with no railing either, I'm not going to do that. I say that because I was on one the other night, I didn't want to be there.
And relatedly to that, what do you do when police become quite hostile to journalists?
Get off the X.
Get out. Get out of there.
Yeah.
One last
My name's
question.
Nick
Thank you.
Morris. I have an interesting perspective, being retired law enforcement from the States, but my point is I see a lot of young and motivated people here. And if you don't have a good grasp of first aid training, then you don't belong out there. You mentioned milk. Milk is a good training aid because it has the same consistency as blood. So the first thing they do when they train you in first aid is pour out 3 quarts to show you what a fatal amount is on the sidewalk of a street. So I see a lot of motivated people, and the police are not going to be your friends out there because they're worried about their own safety. But you need to know first aid for yourself and for the people you're with. So your next stop should be signing up for a first aid kit. I'm not sure how it's structured.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's just some advice.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was editor-in-chief of AFP, my team, we introduced hostile environment training. The most important thing was first aid. People bleed to death. That's the most important thing. Then you take it from there. So, I mean, and I think we have people from the Red Cross, actually, and we hope we can organise our first welcome. So maybe you can come back and give us some first aid training. So that's absolutely essential. And the basic rule, Stevo, is no story is worth dying for. Okay, yeah. So rule number 1.
Yeah, big organisations, I think that's on you. Shame on you if you haven't got first aid trained reporters in this.
Thank you.
Well, let's give a big round of applause to Stevo Steven. This is fabulous. And if, as he's generously said, if some of you want to speak to him afterward, but in a few minutes, I hope you will join us. We're going to have a silent protest outside the building for press freedom and against violence in Hong Kong. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Great, excellent. Thank you.